I usually like to cut down 22nd Street towards Lexington to get those really pretty views of the park that they have there. You know, because it gives me that nice view of nature in the midst of all the concrete here in the city. But you see, the thing is that as I'm walking, I can't help but be reminded of how broke I am. You see, Gramercy Park is the only park in Manhattan that's private. And it's got these tall black fences with locks at all 4 entrances that say 24-hour surveillance. According to the New York Times, there are only 383 keys to this park. And these 383 keys each cost $350. And these locks get switched each year for security purposes, of course. So essentially, I'm just being told that I don't deserve to be here. And so, as I'm walking around the perimeter of this park, I'm kind of put into a somber mood. I get the feeling that, you know, I'm being placed into the lower level of this socioeconomic hierarchy. And I realize that that's kind of the opposite of what I was hoping for with this walk. Hello? Did y'all hear me? Did y'all hear any of that? So as I walk around the perimeter of this park, it kind of puts me in a somber mood, which I realize, because it seems as if I'm being put into this lower place in the socioeconomic hierarchy, which I realize is kind of the opposite of what I was expecting when I was taking this walk. But then I think about how, you know, I'm kind of acting as like all the other poor and working class people because I'm internalizing these ideas that I'm not worthy or I'm inferior because I'm broke. And unfortunately for me, this kind of translates into my classroom experiences. You see, because it's uncomfortable for me to be in class when I'm surrounded by students who, at least in my mind, went to better high schools, probably had parents who were able to better engage in their education, and just simply had more opportunities than I did. And so I began to think about my own struggles as a broke college student, and I'm reminded of how during my freshman year, none of my loans came through till November. So until that point, I was kind of set on like, you know, I gotta go home now. And then I also start to think about how like my sophomore year comes and I didn't get the loans at all, and I kind of had to cancel my housing and not really have a place to stay. But don't worry, I got a meal plan because, you know, if I wasn't gonna be sure where I was gonna sleep at night, I was damn sure gonna make sure I had food to eat. And then don't even get me started on how that same year I picked up to study abroad because that was a lot more affordable than it was to stay here in New York City. But I guess I got the global network to thank for that. But the one good thing that comes from this is that in being reminded of my struggle, it kind of makes it known that it is my struggle that has helped me develop as a person, as a woman, and as a leader. It is through understanding my own struggles that I come to understand the struggles of others. And this has been especially true during my time abroad. My first experience abroad came when I was in Shanghai for 4 months. And while I was there, I learned about the hukou system in China. And this family registry kind of classified you as either urban or rural resident. And so the urban residents, of course, were able to enjoy the social, economic, and cultural benefits that the rural residents just didn't have access to. And it wasn't for any reason except the fact that they lived on a farm. And so it wasn't as if I was face to face with poverty while I was there, but what I did understand was the way that there are political structures that can prevent people from moving up the socioeconomic ladder. The following year, during my junior year, I went on an alternative break trip to Cape Coast, Ghana. And although I knew a little bit about poverty, nothing could really compare to what I saw in the villages of Cape Coast. You see, what I got was the opportunity to go into people's homes and into their communities, and even their funerals, which was more of a celebration, but that's a different story. What I got was the opportunity to really interact with these people, and as we're walking through the villages and shanty towns and going from place to place talking to people about preventable diseases and proper sanitation, we sometimes get conversations like, so you're telling me that I should go to the doctor and get this vaccine. How do you expect me to do that? Who can afford that? And then I dumbly think to myself, well, damn, what did I do? How could I be telling these people to do these things when they probably don't have that access? And so that's when I realized my own internal struggle between wanting to do service and not really knowing quite how to do so properly. There were days when we were in Ghana in which we'd get off our bus of privilege, as I like to call it, because it really did shield us from the outside. But we'd set foot into the village and my eyes would swell and my head would spin, and I would think to myself, like, I can't do this. I can't continue to be here and be okay with the way that people are living in this world. It was really just not okay. And so that next summer, I went on another trip, and this time I was in Lima, Peru, with the Stern International Volunteers. And we were working in a village, in a town called Villa El Salvador. Now, Villa El Salvador was a large urban district on the outskirts of Lima. And the people here were mostly indigenous from the Peruvian highlands, and they fled that area because of terrorism brought by the Shining Path. And so when they got to Lima, they faced a lot of resistance from the government. But these people were resilient. They refused to be forced out by the government. And so all they could do was be relocated to the desert area. And this same resilience prevailed throughout the community even today. Now don't get me wrong, most of these people were poor, and not everyone had access to water or electricity, but the feeling that I got through my interactions with them was that they were willing to do whatever it took to come together and do what's right for their community and their land. And this isn't to say that the same didn't take place in Ghana. It was just that in Ghana, I wasn't able to see any of these things because I was so fixated on the poverty. I couldn't see past it. So now, as I'm thinking of all these things and I realize that I'm back on campus now and I'm going to class and going to meetings and doing all of these 50 things that us undergrad students do, but now it's late and it's dark out and it's that awkward moment between when the NYU bus stops running and Safe Ride hasn't quite started yet, so I realize I gotta take that walk again back home. And usually this is when I pull out my phone so I can be distracted as I'm walking, but what I realized earlier this year when I didn't put my phone away, I realized that I was actually able to pay attention to my walk and to the surrounding things that I was looking at as I walked through Union Square and up Park Ave. And what I saw was a homeless man sleeping in a box that he made into a bed outside of the church. I saw a group of homeless men and women smoking cigarettes together in a circle on a stoop. And I saw the man who sleeps on the corner on top of that subway vent to keep warm at night. And then I'm instantly reminded of my privilege yet again. You see, I'm that person that never thought twice when I saw a homeless man on the street. I'm that person that walked to the opposite side of the subway train because there was a homeless woman sleeping in the corner. And I never realized any of these things until it was brought to my attention this year, and I realized it's absolutely ridiculous that there are 50,000 homeless people in New York City right now. And so I realized that through my traveling experiences and my time in Shanghai and Lima and Cape Coast, that my perspective has kind of changed a little. I realized that 2 years ago, AM BROKEism was my soapbox to tell all of you how broke I was and how much I struggled because of it. It was my way of venting to you all about how frustrating it is that every decision I make is based on the balance in my checking account. But now, after having seen the world and interacting with people from shantytowns and slums, etc., all over the place, AM BROKEism is about how my travels, how my experiences with poverty, like with global poverty, has shaped my outlook on life and has shaped my perspective, especially here in America, on poverty. Poverty looks and feels different no matter where you go. But at the same time, there's some level of familiarity to it. If it weren't for the fact that while I was in Cape Coast, I saw literally a crowd of men, women, and children sleeping on the streets. If it wasn't for that experience, I never would have realized how often I see the same thing right here in New York, on the streets, in parks, and on public transportation. And the thing that I'm realizing as I'm experiencing these things is that I'm broke but I'm here. I may only have $200 to my name, but that doesn't matter because I'm an NYU student, and I was able to study abroad in West Africa, in South America, and in Asia. I realized that my passport brings me so much privilege. And I realized that although monetarily, yes, I have nothing, but I'm so privileged to be rich in cultural capital. I've been able to see the world, and with that, I've seen the harsh realities of poverty, and that's devastating. The thing when I got to Peru and experiencing all the connectedness of the people who were living there, I realized how they had a sense of human capital, and I saw that with my own eyes. I saw that they were able to band together to do what was right for their people. David Beckman is the president of an organization called Bread for the World. And he said, in our country, we put a lot of emphasis on self-reliance, on everyone fending for themselves. And I know that this was at least true for me because of the simple fact that I thought I was the only person to survive college while broke. But David also went on to say that these are all great strengths to be able to care for yourself, but as a nation, it has not been our strength to do what we can to reduce poverty. This problem needs collective action. This problem needs social justice and equality. But most importantly, it needs service. It's not about us going into these places and fixing people or helping them or enforcing our Western ideals on them. It's about us working collaboratively with communities. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't have all the answers, and I don't know how to exactly just end poverty right up. But I know that these things matter to me. And I know that although it's taken me a really long time to figure out what exactly it is that I want to do with my life, and even today, 29 days before graduation, I'm still a little confused, there is one thing that I do know, and that is that no matter what, I will do whatever I can to work in service of others. Thank you.